Pour moi, Amazon Web Services, c'est
Innovazione.
Wir sind da, um Ideen zu verwirklichen.
Developing the best and to hire people that are bar raising.
Curieux, inventif.
Work hard, have fun, make history.
AWS geht für mich um die Menschen.
Alors, pour moi, la Suisse, c'est vraiment un pays paradisiaque.
La natura, le montagne, i laghi sono sicuramente il posto preferito dove posso ricaricare le mie batterie.
Aber die Schweiz ist nicht nur schön, es ist auch effizient aufgebaut. Alles funktioniert einfach.
There's a lot of tradition in the country, but what amazes me is the fact that the country is going big on digitization and the amount of innovation happening in Switzerland is just mind-boggling.
C'est un pays de pionniers. Nous sommes vraiment à la pointe de l'innovation dans différents secteurs industriels avec une exigence qualité et une marque renommée.
E ogni giorno ho la fortuna di lavorare con le start-up più innovative della Svizzera e supportare i founders nel loro percorso imprenditoriale.
Mein Hauptjob ist es eigentlich, Probleme zu lösen und meinen Kunden zu helfen, ihre Ziele zu erreichen. Mit AWS-Infrastruktur kann man sofort einen Impact auf den Carbon Footprint von einer Organisation haben.
En analysant les différentes évolutions et tendances du marché, en challengeant le statu quo, en essayant d'aider les équipes à structurer notre proposition de valeur pour aider au mieux nos clients.
We might have different roles over here as well, but the 16 leadership principles, those are the common set of values, those core principles that we work with that help us rapidly earn trust with our customers, work backwards from their lighthouse challenges that the clients might have.
Je trouve que chez AWS, j'ai la chance de faire partie de cette évolution rapide.
Co-develop solutions that are market-making, that are differentiating, that actually solve real-world business problems and are at the forefront of innovation for our clients.
AWS geht für mich um die Menschen. Die Menschen machen Kultur aus innerhalb einer Firma und wir sind alle da, um die Welt und die Welt für unsere Kunden besser zu machen.
De cela découle et une culture et un référentiel commun axé sur, premièrement, l'obsession client. 90% de ce qu'on offre et de ce qu'on produit vient des demandes directes du client.
You can't begin to imagine how incredibly inspiring it is to work with people who have the same set of core values as you do, but obviously have different backgrounds, but are able to finish the sentence and finish the thought for you. And just having these people reporting into you, having these people that you work with, people that you report into you, who in many cases are much better than you, to learn from them is incredibly inspiring.
Ogni giorno metto a disposizione il mio network e condivido le mie esperienze per portare valore a tutto l'ecosistema delle start-up svizzero.
Je m'appelle Ruba.
Ich bin Dana Riedener.
Mi chiamo Gianmaria.
I'm Abhishek Murgai.
Wir sind alle da, um die Welt und die Welt von unseren Kunden besser zu machen.
Please welcome on stage Yvonne Bettkober, General Manager for AWS in Switzerland and Austria.
Good morning. How are you guys doing? Yeah, I always have to do this. So I'm being paid today to warm up for the keynote. So you need to help me a little bit. Can I have a round of applause? Good morning, everyone. So I hope you guys are doing well. We are having an incredible week. We actually took advantage of having some of the most senior leaders in our organization being in country this week to do what we love doing, right? Which is spending time with you. We've had many, many sessions, roundtable with CTOs. We spoke with our independent software vendors leaders. We spent time with founders of our startup customers as well. And yesterday we had a fantastic evening with our partners. So we really are pumped about this day today. Now, for me, it's a very special moment being standing on this stage right now looking at you. I cannot tell you how it feels. It's amazing. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Yvonne Bettkober, and I'm your host for today. So let me do what hosts usually do and wish you a very, very warm welcome to the Swiss Cloud Days. We hope that you'll have a day full of ideation, inspiration, and hopefully as well, connection with each other. Now, before I let in our first keynote speaker, I want to reflect a little bit on where we are. The last time I was standing on a stage like this was in, I think, October 2019 BC. And when I say BC, I'm intentional, because that was before Corona. And you know how the world has changed since then. From geopolitical crisis to inflation to economic crisis to energy crisis, we are running out of words to describe what we've been going through over the past years. So we have had to unlearn a lot, right? To question some of the things that we thought we knew, and eventually as well to find our ways in what is the new normal, this high intensity, high complexity, high volatility world that we live in. And the pace is accelerating. And I think for us, what it means is that the leadership imperative is very much helping our organization, our colleagues, our peers to navigate the uncertainty and ambiguity that we have today. So more than ever, we need to be able to pivot fast and to adjust to an ever-changing world. That what it means for Switzerland is very special, because we are a country of inventors. We are known for great quality of product and services. But what we need now is to be able to extend this quality of services with digital capability, which is the what of digital transformation. But I also want us to think about the how of digital transformation, because it's about enabling your organizations to be agile and efficient so that they can deliver what we call high-frequency innovation. Jeff Bezos once said the only competitive advantage that a company can have is agility. Everything else that you build will be copied. The one thing that could not be taken away is the DNA. So how can you build, how can you lead for agility? Now, in Switzerland, for us, innovation has been at the core of what we've done since day one, right? And many of you might not know, but some of the very early AWS customers were in Switzerland. We've had long-standing customers like Meteo Suisse, like Novartis, and so on. And in 2016, we opened our new office. Now, for me, it's special as well, because just a month ago, I had my 3rd anniversary at AWS. And I can tell you that the journey we've had has been terrific. Ultimately, we had the opportunity to work with you, to earn your trust, and to really engage with customers across segment, across industries, and across size as well within Switzerland. And that makes us very, very proud. Now, as the number of customers has grown in the country, so has our presence as well. And I found myself literally becoming a real estate agent for this organization over the last 3 years. So we've opened an office in Geneva. We just moved a few months ago to our new office in Mittenke here in Zurich. And we continue to invest in the country. We will be opening an office in Bern in November. It's almost ready. And then, as you know, we pre-announced that we will be opening a new AWS Europe Zurich region in H2 of this year. What we wanted to do with that lighthouse project for us as an AWS team here in country was really to offer you choice, right? The choice to be able to leverage the most comprehensive cloud with the greatest breadth of services, but also the deepest functionality within those services, but to be able to do that on Swiss soil. And we are on track to be bringing you this region by the end of this year. Now, before I get too excited, let me make sure that I do my job, which is actually welcoming the keynote speaker on stage. And I would like to introduce somebody who I think is a very special personality in this country. He's been at the center of this paradigm shift to digital first from many aspects. On one hand, by actually being a leader of one of the very first digitally disrupted industry, but as well as being an ambassador and a spokesperson for Switzerland's digital journey towards becoming a leading digital hub globally. So, please help me welcome on stage the CEO of Ringier and founder of Digital Switzerland, Mark Walder.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Yvonne. I will be talking 7 minutes about transformation of nations, transformation of countries, as well as transformation of companies, of what you do in your daily business. To transform a country, to transform a nation is as important as it is for a company. Now, cashless is a super important topic. Sweden, Holland, they're shifting towards cashless countries. Kenya, by the way, is almost a cashless country already today. What kids learn in school, super important. My daughter is 14 years old, the younger one. She has pretty much the same schedule I did 40 years ago. So, e-ID, e-government, becoming a cashless country, what kids learn in school, and all of you in terms of lifelong learning, super important. Let's have a look at where Switzerland stands. Let's start with the good news. Global talent competitiveness, number one. Strongest nation brand globally, so Switzerland is a super strong brand as a nation, number one. Global Innovation Index, first place. Skilled workforce in terms of higher education system, number two globally. In terms of skills of the Global Competitiveness Index, skilled workforce, number one. Number three, in terms of research of the Global AI Index. Only 76 in terms of women in high-skilled jobs. Very bad ranking. Starting a business in Switzerland, still complicated, takes too long. By the way, closing a business, if it doesn't work well, bad ranking as well. High-tech exports, 31. Let's shift to the startup ecosystem. 300 startups founded yearly, that's a good number again. But let's see how much capital is being invested. So these are 3 billion in 21, but let's look at the investments in venturing in terms of per capita. Switzerland is on third rank. As you see, Estonia, small country, but almost 2,000 euros per capita being invested in VC funding, Sweden number two. So where do startups actually exist? Which areas do they choose? 1/4 is ICT in terms of fintech, 1/4 is ICT general, and 1/4 is biotech, and then the rest is healthcare, clean tech, and a bit of consumer products. This is how we think you need to try to transform countries or to keep them competitive. Switzerland does have very good rankings, so our goal, Digital Switzerland's goal, is to keep Switzerland on the top ranks. So B2C, of course, by the way, this is, I think, the weakest point here in Switzerland, meaning the citizens. Do they trust digital tools? Would they trust an eID? Would they be ready to do cashless, to shift into cashless? Would they accept if the bank would tell you, if you want to get cash from the bank, only 300 francs, not more in cash? I think that's the weakest point in this country. B2B, I think, is the strongest point. This is basically you. And B2G, so government, I think we're getting better, but we're quite slow, federalistic system. Biggest, I think, need for action is this one. Shortage of ICT specialists is going to be huge, is already huge now, I would say. So the delta between ICT apprentices now and the need is already here. 2 slides about Ringier. Ringier is an international media company acting in 20 countries, 8,000 employees. Now you have to put yourself into my shoes. Newspapers and magazines was our business until 10 years ago, so totally offline. We started, and we're one of the, I think, leaders in Europe now in terms of media industry with a share of 73% in digital. This takes courage, this takes investments, and you see on this chart, we weren't super innovative ourselves, but we did great M&A and great post-transaction work. Ringier and AWS, this is not going to be a commercial, this is super pragmatic. A, time to market reduced for our company by 80%. 10% better average uptime per month. This is very relevant. Power put into the developer's hand, so we stay lean and agile. Operational costs decrease. And last but not least, frictionless, rapid test and development environments. This is my most important chart to the end for all of you. How many questions do you think a 5-year-old has per day? How many? 100. More important, same statistic, how many questions does a 48-year-old have? So my wish to you is, if we want to improve, if we want to transform, let's be like 5-year-olds. Thank you very much.
Now I'm a little bit worried because I'm exactly 48 years old and I'm not sure if I may be asking more than 5 questions a day. So I'll be working on that. I'm sure my team will be extremely enthusiastic about me asking a lot of questions every day. So let me continue with the agenda, and I would like really to build on what Mark has said. Innovation and digital transformation is at the core of everything we do as businesses, but also for institutions. We talked about governments earlier as well. Now, for us, we want to be contributing to preserving Switzerland's prosperity and supporting it with digital tools, but also with digital methods. So we have defined for us this competitiveness and innovation agenda of Switzerland as core priority for our team. But there's one thing we know at AWS. There is no innovation without security. And that's the reason why, for us, we've made security and privacy of your data the job zero. And before I talked about innovation, about competitiveness in a moment, allow me to spend a few minutes on the security topic. We are very, very proud as a company that some of the most security-sensitive organizations in the world have chosen AWS. From NASA or Liberty Mutual in the US, financial services institution in Switzerland like Swiss Re or Finova, or even security specialists like the Kudelski Group. And we are very proud that the work we've done have been rewarded by the trust of this kind of institution. But I would like to look at security also from the aspect of the SMBs, because we tend to forget them. The National Cybersecurity Council has reported last year 21,000 cybersecurity-related incidents. This was double as much as the year before. And by the way, these are the ones that have been reported, because as you know, many of them either don't even get noticed or never get reported. Now, what that means for an SMB who cannot afford sophisticated IT security systems, security experts in-house, and so on and so forth, is that this cybersecurity topic is becoming even more accrued for them. But it doesn't have to be, because ultimately, the same AWS core infrastructure that runs for the NASA is at their disposal. And they can help them actually improve their security posture as they are accelerating the pace of their innovation. So we want to make sure that for SMBs in Switzerland, we can support the idea of really having a secure, scalable, but also cost-effective solution that they can run their business. A good example of that is actually Bern Mobil, which is a public transportation company in Bern, obviously. And what they've done is that they wanted to find protection against ransomware and decided to use cloud storage. And this obviously has allowed them to be cost-effective, and more importantly, as actually Mark mentioned, they do not have to carry the burden of maintenance within their organization. And when we talk security, obviously we talk as well about privacy and we talk about compliance automatically. And here I must really repeat myself, because AWS, we support more security standards and more compliance certification than any other cloud provider. And I talked to you earlier saying that by the end of this year, we're going to be offering exactly this in-country in Switzerland. Now, with more than 300 security, compliance, and governance services and features, including things about encryption, access, logging. You have the tools at your hand to be able to protect and to prevent unauthorized access to your data. But on the compliance side as well, I think it's important to mention that we work with the FINMA, we support customers on their journey for getting approval on the compliance topic as well. To cut a long story short, really, when you are using the AWS cloud, you are able to comply with all data protection law. And yes, you remain in the ownership of your data and in full control of those, including even if you are subject to secrecy and confidentiality obligations. I think you've all read that exactly this week, actually, the Bund announced that AWS is one of the companies that have been awarded to participate and contribute into starting the public cloud journey. Now, we talked about security. Let me move a little bit to innovation, right? We have the enabler. Now, what does it mean for us? How do we want to contribute to the innovation agenda of the country? We are a country of pioneers. We are innovators. And an important part of that, we just heard that 3.1 billion invested in startups is the startup who is spearheading part of this innovation. And startups, by the way, have been a very, very, very early group of customers for us. Here in Switzerland, we work with the ETH startups like Antibiotics, with Verity, with Lightly, and we help them build and train their machine learning model, as well as actually scaling their organization globally together with AWS. We work also with EPFL. And last week, actually, I was introduced to a EPFL startup, actually, that does a silicon-based microfluid cooling solution. And you must know that in a data center, 30% of the energy used is actually used for cooling. So imagine that you would have actually be able to develop chips that can exceed heat 10 times faster than others. That would be a massive saving of energy. So innovation at the core, 10,000 customers using AWS in Switzerland, from small to big ones. But one thing you might not know is that many of the apps that you are using every day, actually to run your daily business, also run on AWS. Think about the SBB app. Think about Swiss Topo that many of us are using when you go on a hike. HomeGate, Imo Scout, and think about the COVID tracking app as well. So we feel that we are slowly getting into the core, actually, of Swiss society and really contributing also to your daily life with small and big innovations. Now, I talked about security and privacy and compliance as a foundation, then about innovation as what we're trying to do. But I would like to spend a little bit of time on the competitiveness and look at it from a slightly different aspect. Because when we think competitiveness, we think about maximizing the input-output ratio, right? And for us here in Switzerland, having been a high-cost country, this is something that we've been able to really perfect over decades. We're very, very good at that. And then the cloud comes on top, allowing also for new forms of competitiveness and effectiveness, right? On one hand, by just saving costs where you migrate to the cloud, but also by using the elasticity principles, right? So you can scale your resources up and down as you need them, and there's no need to over-provision just in case of future peaks. And what that makes possible is that you're actually able to experiment more frequently because the cost of experimentation go down. So you can take more risk as an organization, and that really would allow you to accelerate your innovation journey. Now, the other aspect of competitiveness that I wanted to touch on is actually related to sustainability. Because competitiveness is also having an appropriate use of resources. And the most finite resource we currently have, and I think we've all realized that, is this planet. So we do a lot as AWS to really try to contribute to building a digital future that is also going to be a sustainable future. As you know, we've set very ambitious goals for ourselves, right? We decided that we want to be running on 100% renewable energy by 2025, and to be carbon neutral by 2030, which will be kind of 10 years in advance of by 2040, which will be 10 years in advance of the Paris Climate Agreement. And we've been working super hard in doing that. We have a $2 billion climate pledge fund that is actually funding startups that invest in sustainable solutions and also in sustainable development solutions. We are also investing heavily. We just announced an additional 71 new renewable energy projects. That will bring us to 359. And we'll be producing roughly 4.6 million home equivalent in terms of energy from renewable sources to fuel and power our operations. And we continue to optimize as well from an AWS perspective in how we're building our data centers. There is a new research from 451 Research that actually found out that when you're hosting your infrastructure on AWS, you are more than 80% more carbon efficient than in a traditional data center. And when we'll be on renewable energy, that number will grow to 96% more carbon efficient. So we are really investing in helping you by moving to the cloud, doing also the right thing from an environmental perspective. And last but not least, carbon footprint tool. We do have a sustainability pillar now in our well-architected structure so that when you build your infrastructure, you can monitor your footprint and also optimize for energy efficiency. And Helvetia is a local customer of ours that is a very good example of that. They moved, I think, 152 applications in the meantime in the cloud. And what they realized is that they were able to save 67% of carbon emission compared to equivalent on-premise infrastructure deployment. So what we believe is that we're just getting started. There is a lot to be done. So for us, as we say, it's day one. But there's something that is very important in the DNA and the mental model that we're using as an organization, and that is that the digital future that we're trying to build has to be a sustainable future. Now, let me shift and do something that is very, very important today. I was here on Monday because I was quite worried about, the logistic and everything. I was walking around. I could not imagine that we'll have this room and this place in the situation that it is now. So I want to say a big, big thank you to our sponsoring partners because they've been working day and night to make this happen. So thank you very much to our platinum sponsor, Accenture, Capgemini, Intel, Snowflake, SoftwareOne, Swisscom. Big thank you as well to our gold sponsor, Corbit, Elka, Ergon Informatik, NetApp, Okta, PagerDuty, Rackspace Technology, VMware. And as usual, it takes a village to actually raise a child, and it takes a village to make an event of this size. We do have as well our silver, bronze, and our advanced training partner sponsor here. And they're all in the expo outside, so I hope you will take the time to go and visit as well and understand what they can actually do to help you advance your digital transformation and your cloud journey. Now, since I'm on the topic of the partners, actually, I would like to talk about Swisscom and actually to talk with Swisscom. Because Swisscom is not just a platinum partner and sponsor for today and a great partner for us. Switzerland is also a customer Swisscom is also a customer who's driving their own transformation, also building on AWS. In 2020, we announced a strategic collaboration agreement with Swisscom. And I would like to make sure that I can give you the opportunity to hear from the man who actually helped us architect this collaboration about his experience in transforming as an organization, but also helping his customer transform. So help me welcome on stage Urs Lehner, Head of Business Customer, Swisscom. So, willkommen.
Thank you.
We wanted to do something a little bit different, so I'm just going to grill Urs with a lot of questions, and then we'll see what he can tell us about them. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I just mentioned that you yourself are going through your own transformation as well, at the same time helping customers transform their business. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it means for you? So what are the things that you're observing, that you're learning?
So absolutely. So first of all, our transformation using AWS, we decided on Swisscom 2 years ago to really push this in a bold manner, and we have invested into education for our staff. In the meanwhile, we have far more than 1,400 employees which were educated on AWS elements. We have hundreds of certified engineers, AWS architects, data scientists, and others. So it was a huge investment, but we took the decision really that Swisscom, our own workloads, we want to transform them into the AWS cloud, and that's the journey we started already 2 years ago, as you mentioned.
Very cool. So what would you say are you most famous for at your customers? I mean, you have this unique differential advantage that you can practice what you preach because you're going through the same transformation, but what do they want from you? What are they expecting?
First of all, for sure, it's around proximity, it's around Swiss quality, it's around journey to the cloud, it's around professional services which are requested due to the reality that we ourselves have in the meanwhile huge experience what it means at large scale, migrating own workloads into hybrid scenarios, into AWS cloud environments. There is, let's say, a huge learning path that we took around compliance, around security, around elements we just mentioned before. And therefore, we really can say that we today can provide not only slideware, we know what it means to drive such a transformation at large scale in a Swiss-based environment like Swisscom.
That's really cool. I was actually saying yesterday in the event with partners that we underestimate how hard digital transformation is and how important it is to have somebody who knows the organizational implication of that as well. Now, a lot of customers talk migration, right? Do you see more? Are there more topics actually that you can help customers with in that context?
Absolutely. It starts for sure with migration, but we also have the ability to operate AWS workloads. In addition to that, we also have a large SAP practice, which is used to migrate SAP workloads towards AWS environments and others, and therefore, yes, we definitely have a broad portfolio also concerning banking vertical, but we go beyond that. We also have some own services, Swisscom own services, like the Mobility Insight platform today, which runs on AWS. So therefore, yes, we have transformed a set of our portfolio elements towards your cloud environment to be ready to serve our customers at scale, also in very critical services. Absolutely.
Super cool. Because I think you're touching on a lot of things here, right? There is one aspect of how do we help migrate workloads to the cloud, but there is also a vertical or industry-specific needs where you need the expertise and credibility for the customer, and in some cases even having some ready solution that you can offer and that you can take them on the journey with. So, how is that going? How is the journey going with your customers?
Yeah. Let's say, first of all, we are really proud that we have the ability to execute that together with AWS at large scale here in Switzerland. We are definitely proud to have the ability to support our customers on their journey, in their speed, in their ambition, to make value for their businesses out of the capabilities that we, as a partner of AWS, together with you, are able to deliver to the market here in Switzerland. In addition, for us, it's a huge transformation from telecommunications towards the tech co. So we also say from telco to tech co. In certain elements, we are by far already larger in IT services and solution business than telecommunications. And this journey is really a challenge for ourselves, but it's also a great opportunity to drive digitization here in Switzerland for our startups, for our SME businesses, and also for the large corporations.
And changing your own business model as well, right? I was provocating yesterday that especially partners who have the success you've had historically and that have a well-established customer base sometimes struggle to transform, right? They're trying to do the same thing in the cloud that they were doing on premise, but that seems to not be working. You have to transform the organization.
Absolutely, and that's also fundamentally spoken the challenge that we are in, because we have, from a traditional environment, we have, let's say, outsourced workloads from our customers on our premises, and there are all scenarios available if you look to journeys for our customers, and therefore transforming also the DNA of our own organization, that it's not always about make the stuff ourselves. It's combining elements of partners and our own services really to drive value for our customers and to be able to help them in this journey, that they remain competitive or are even, as you mentioned, have an opportunity to tackle new environments due to the agility they can gain out of such transformations. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you for this insight. But before I let you go, we have a large group of people here that are in the middle or just starting their cloud journey. So what is your word of advice? You know, having been on that journey for 2 years now, what would you tell to the crowd here today?
First of all, it's great to have a plan, but reality is different. And it's not about deviation management, it's really about how can we engage the organization as a cultural transformation. How can we make sure that we have the needed capabilities available? How can we scale? How can we, let's say, create a vision that the whole organization wants to be part of such a transformation? And there it really makes sense to invest sufficient energy and thinking into such an approach, how to engage. Because once it runs, then we really have great results. But transforming out of an existing business model into a new one, that's really, I guess, where it makes a lot of sense to think about how to make that happen for your company.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Urs Lehner.
It was my pleasure. Thanks a lot, and great to be here.
Thank you, Urs.
Bye-bye.
So it's about fighting gravity, right? Having a strategy and then executing on a plan, knowing that the plan might eventually not be the same every single week that you look at it. So ultimately, eventually about courage. I'm coming to the end of my part today, and I just really want to do two things. One, I want to thank my team and ask you, if you meet one of those guys wearing orange shoes anywhere today, just give them a big smile, because I think they've been on their feet for weeks. I can't remember when they slept last time, so big thank you for this team. And I also would like to share with you the sense of gratitude that I have actually for having the opportunity to stand here and talk to you, but also to the gratitude of working in technology. And every time I'm being asked why I work in technology, I say this because I believe that technology can change the world, and I really believe that. Now, when the war started in Ukraine, we were one of the companies that responded to the ask for help that Ukrainian government sent us. Within a few days, we actually had a mobile storage and compute device in Poland, and we got to work. Since then, we have migrated in Ukraine more than 10 petabytes of data for 27 ministries, 18 Ukraine universities, and the largest remote K-12 schools that they have in country. And this in itself is really exciting, right? One of the Ukrainian bank, private bank, was able to actually migrate within 45 days, migrate from 3,500 servers, a little bit more than 40 petabytes of data. So this is all heroic in a technological sense. But what is more important, what it means for the people. We could digitize the land registry, allowing the country eventually and the state to continue to function and to preserve property records so that when people go back, they can rebuild. We have been able to migrate educational data so that students are able to prove the record of their education and eventually find jobs. We could secure years and years of research so that the scientists can go back to work where they left it. And obviously now we have been able really to allow for thousands of students to finish their school year and to pass the exam. And this is why I'm thankful to be working in technology, because I really believe that technology matters. But what matters even more within technology is the people in technology and what we do with it. So Urs talked about fighting gravity and getting going. Change is about courage, and leadership is about enabling change. So I would like to invite all of us to be leaders as we're driving this change in our respective organizations, in the society around us, and in the institution that we serve. Thank you for being here today. And now, let me invite our guest of honor. Let me introduce our keynote speaker for today, Dr. Werner Vogels, CTO of Amazon.com.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you all for coming here. I know we all have busy lives, so the fact that you're taking almost a day out of your life to come and listen to us is actually quite special. Yeah, so thank you very much for that. I loved the presentation earlier that actually said, so a 5-year-old asks you 100 questions a day. It feels like a lot more, though. Yeah? And actually, if you reach my age, I'm almost 64, you actually have to answer 100 questions a day. Yeah. So I would like to talk a bit about sort of the breadth and scope of AWS over the years. Yeah, by now, AWS is 16 years old. And actually, given the accuracy of timekeeping in Switzerland, we're actually 6,045 days old. Yeah, just to be accurate, as most Swiss are. If you go back to 2006, when we launched the first service, one of the things that drove our whole development of AWS was that innovation was constrained. And a good example for that was in early 2000, it was really popular to just put an API on some of your business processes and see what kind of innovation would happen in the outside world. So Amazon, the retailer, did that by putting an API on their catalog and search and shopping cart. And indeed, amazing new businesses were being built. Yeah, comparison shopping, complete new interfaces, really, really exciting. But as soon as one of those companies became popular, they all started to stutter in their execution. And why? Because they suddenly needed $5 to $10 million of investment because they needed to start buying servers. And they need to hire IT people. And almost 80% or 90% of that money would go into IT, which had nothing to do with the new service that they were building. And as such, all of those companies failed. Because in those days, really being able to get $5 to $10 million for an unproven concept was unheard of. And so the one thing that cloud completely changed was that anything that was sort of constrained, all these hardware pieces, became a software programmable resource. Suddenly you had access to as much capacity as you wanted. And more importantly, you could release capacity if you no longer needed it. And that was sort of a revolutionary step. Yeah, because everything in those days, if you wanted to build a company or wanted to operate at internet scale, was extremely expensive and extremely constrained. Basically, you needed to buy as much hardware for your peak, which meant that the rest of the year you were actually set with this old hardware that you couldn't do anything with. And so even if it became just more popular, it's not like you could go out and drive around the corner to the co-op and buy a bunch of servers. So everything was constrained in those days, and cloud removed all of those constraints. And if I look back at 2006, the first compute instances that we had, the M1s, it really fills my heart to see this old numbering of these instances. Today, we have well over 500 of them, all the way from massive memory machines to max M1s. Yeah? Anything you would like to do in compute today, you can do in the cloud at scale. And indeed, customers are doing so. In 2021, our customers, on average, were launching 60 million instances a day. And that was double from the fact what we saw in 2019. And that's not even counting the instances that are continuously running. I have a few instances that probably have been running for the past 2-3 years. Yeah, so this is just the scale of elasticity that you have in AWS. Now, indeed, cloud removed those constraints. Unfortunately, there are a number of constraints that are not within our control. Yeah, although we've been working really hard on improving the speed of light, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But we're working on it. And the other constraints still are, of course, residential requirements with respect to data, the reliability of connectivity. And of course, we really would like to have massive bandwidth and the lowest latency possible. So if you go back to 2006, the first cloud that we launched was in eastern of the US. And in those days, you really could think about the cloud was something that you could basically point to. Yeah, that somewhere sits in the east of the US, and then Dublin came, and then the West Coast, and then other places. But latency mattered for our customers. So bringing more and more services closer to our customers was really important, because if you really wanted to build new style of applications, you wanted to have low latency. And one of these examples is, for example, building voice assistants. There, latency absolutely matters. Because if you want to have a realistic conversation, it needs to go pretty fast. If you have to wait seconds for an answer to come back, it doesn't feel natural. So latency is extremely important. So now, we've been expanding this footprint significantly. We have 27 regions around the world, 87 availability zones, basically, let's say, data centers or groups of data centers, and they spread over 6 continents. And so this helps us bring capacity close to customers and reduce latency as much as possible. And so by now, cloud is no longer something that you can actually point to one place. It is everywhere, and it is around you. And we continue to expand this. We have 7 new regions announced, including the one here in Switzerland that we will be launching before the end of this year. And it's not just these big regions that consist of multiple availability zones, where each availability zone is, again, 1 or more data centers. But also, for example, we have points of presence, well over 400 of those. And our content delivery network makes use of that. But you can also run compute at the edge with cloud-front functions or Lambda at the edge. And you can make use of these points of presence as ingest points into, for example, S3. And we don't only have these big regions for compute and storage. We also have something called local zones. Yeah, in a local zone, you have a subset of these AWS services like EC2 and EBS and ECS. And we started off with 16 of these local zones in the US to really bring compute and storage closer to our customers, to really build applications that wouldn't be possible otherwise. Now, one of these examples is, for example, making music together. If you want to be in remote locations, but you want to make music together to be synchronized, it needs to happen within 25 milliseconds. And so, for example, if you would be a band that wants to rehearse in Houston, Texas, you cannot make use of the East Coast zone of the East Coast region of the US because the latency is too much. But with a local zone in Houston itself, they're able to do this. And it's not just, we started off with those in the US. We have 30 more metros in the world that will be adding these local zones, including 12 here in Europe. And that's not the only place where we're bringing AWS services closer to customers. Yeah, many of the new 5G access points have the promise of actually much lower latency. But then if you hit the 5G point and you still have to go out over the internet to reach the applications that you're running, you lose much of that latency. So wavelengths is actually small AWS zones that sit in the access point of 5G itself. So you can build all sorts of applications there, whether it is streaming or whether it's gaming or vehicle control or things like that. You no longer need to go out over the internet to reach those services, but they happen directly in the 5G access points. Now, if you think about the network remains, of course, important, especially if you think about latency. Yeah, so in the early days, 2006, it was easy. We had a flat network. Everybody got a unique IP address from our flat network. But of course, it didn't scale over time. Yeah, you didn't want to have one fixed IP address. You wanted to have dynamic IP addressing. And so we added those in 2008. And then we had customers that really said, well, you know what? I really like the whole cloud concept, but I want to connect it to my own data center that I have. And so we introduced virtual private cloud that allows you to cordon off a piece of the cloud, assign your own addressing blocks to it, connect it back to your own data centers, and it looked then as if your own data center was elastic. You could flow over into the cloud using your own addressing space. And that was 2009. Now, in 2022, this is how the AWS network looks like. Now we have a fully redundant 100 gig connections across the world. And it's not just for our own data plane. You, as our customers, can make use of this as well. We have a whole series of these kind of core networking and delivery services, all the way from VPNs to DNS to content delivery, all of those. And you can make use of these points of presence in the world you make use of S3 transfer acceleration. Another area that our customers were really struggling with, especially if you're a larger enterprise, is to actually build networks between all your different offices and maybe manufacturing plants across the world. So we added something recently called AWS Cloud WAN. It allows you to build your own corporate networks overlaid on the AWS network. So what you do is you pick a region that are close to your site. Let's say you have 100 offices around the world. The offices that are closest to, let's say, Sao Paulo, pick Sao Paulo as their access point. And then you start defining a network over all of this, a software-defined network. And you also can make it secure, because you can actually say, these offices should be allowed to only access this particular network, and my manufacturing sites are only using the other network. And as such, you can overlay a complete network on top of the AWS network without you actually owning any of those networks. You can monitor, of course, this through a central dashboard. Wouldn't it be possible without any of our partners, such as, indeed, Swisscom, as we talked about earlier today? Now, we have an amazing set of partners, but more importantly, we have an amazing set of customers. Yeah? And their innovations that we've seen happening here in Switzerland, for example, are really mind-blowing. And some of you have been customers with us from day one, from 2006, even before we had a region here in Europe. Now, one of our customers that are doing this at absolute scale is Avaloq. And they've migrated their core system to the cloud to offer products to their customers that they would not be able to build before cloud. And to tell us more about that is the co-CEO of Avaloq, Dr. Thomas Beck. Thomas, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thomas Beck. As Werner already mentioned, I'm the co-CEO of Avaloq. And as we are in our home country, Switzerland, I think at least some of you know about Avaloq. And if not some of you, many of you for sure, are clients of banks which are using Avaloq as software or as services. So you're all familiar with Avaloq directly or indirectly. Now, what is that presentation about the next 7 minutes? It's about Avaloq for sure and a bit about our relationship to AWS and how public cloud can redefine the future of finance. So first, let's start with Avaloq. Avaloq is a provider of premium digital solutions, especially for wealth management and private banking. Not only because we have also retail banks, for example, the big Raiffeisen Group is also one of our customers, and others as well. But we have worldwide 150 clients, more than 150 clients, especially in Europe, also in Asia, in the Asia-Pacific region, down to Australia even. We are managing on our platforms together 4 trillion of Swiss francs under assets. And for sure, to keep that #1 place in the world for wealth management services, we are reinvesting 25% every year from our annual revenue back into R&D. Now, when we're talking about redefining the future of finance, we can do that with a public cloud. It's a technology. But is there even a need for a change? Because if there is not a need for a change, the best technology will not be adapted and will not be used. And we see, and Yvonne mentioned it in the beginning already, about a lot of changes in the world and the financial industry trends that we see. So let me focus more on the left side, the wealth shifts and the technological evolution that we are seeing. What means wealth shift? A new generation is getting more and more wealthy. And I say a new generation, that it's not only the next generation, it's a different generation. Because they were growing up with the digitalization, they have their smartphones as they were babies. They're getting now the wealth, and they do not accept anymore the pace of the past. They need something innovative, they need it at their fingertips, and they do not wait until someone is getting ready. They are used that someone is already ready. So these kind of things are bringing challenges to financial industry, especially to the incumbents, because we see a rise in the fintech industry who are serving exactly that need, that demand of that new generation. For sure, we have also these kind of things of compliance. The regulations are kicking in more and more, and for sure we have then also the combination of all these kind of things which are bringing then the challenges to the financial industry to cope with that. So now, what can you do if you're under such a kind of situation that you have maybe never perceived beforehand? How can you change yourself as a financial industry? I think you have to do a bit about your thinking about what is the new business model, what is the new strategy. And Amazon also presented this very successfully. If you think about, is a fintech industry or is another bank a competitor? Or can you transform competitors into customers? If you transform competitors into customers, then you have exactly a platform game opened. And these kinds of transformation is not possible without cloud, especially public cloud setups. Because you cannot manage as a bank, also we as Avaloq, we have also an own data center, we cannot manage in the future that kind of magnitude of transactions, of security, of compliance issues, of scalability, of monitoring. This can only be done by a hyperscaler like AWS. So these kind of things are coming together now, and this is the start of the public cloud also in financial industry. And the formula for success is you have to be innovative on the one side, you have to be fast, but you have also to take care that you're standardized, industrialized to a maximum level. Namely there, where it doesn't make a difference for your customers. To be not standardized for sure on the front end, on the digital end for your customers, and having there the individualization part in is also important. Now, how can you do that? How can you do that on an application side, and can you do that on an infrastructural side? We were at Avaloq thinking about, okay, we have a core banking system, we have a modular system built up, but we do not have particular items that can address those kind of needs. So we built up a multi-product strategy, and then we said strategically, we are partnering with someone who can do the same things on an infrastructure level. And you can see here state-of-art public cloud architecture, and some elements Werner already explained beforehand, so I don't go into the details, but very important what also Yvonne said, compliancy, data security, scalability, monitoring topics. If you want to build that all on your own, being a bank or being us as Avaloq, you have no chance anymore. No? You have to go to a partner and partner with them. And one impressive use case is the BDO example. BDO is Banco de Oro. It's the biggest bank in the Philippines and one of the biggest banks in Southeast Asia. And they were asking us, can we do a transformation of our core banking system, especially for the prime segment of wealth management, together with you? And say, for sure we can do that. We are present in Southeast Asia. They say, you know what? We want to do that in 6 months. 6 months. Normally, 35 years of Avaloq, normally doing core banking migration or transformation, you take in the plan 18 months and you'll be very happy if it's then happening within 24 months even, or 24 plus, I have to say. 6 months. And you know already, if you're then saying, if you screw up the biggest bank in whatever kind of country, you will have no other client anymore in that country. That's absolutely sure. So we were thinking 6 months seems to be a bit dramatic. How can we do that? In a partnership together with Amazon, we did it. And we made it really in 6 months. Today, we have the 4 biggest banks in the Philippines as our customers due to that success. I think this is what an amazing story about what you can do in a partnership. And we were leveraging for sure all the kind of things that you have already heard before from Amazon. So the security and compliance topics, the largest community, also with partners they have, the global reach that they have, the breadth and depth in functionalities. We will talk about these kind of things for sure later on, also Q&A breakout session, a bit in more depth. But what overarchingly was also important is the professional services that we received from AWS, because they were guiding also our customer then through all these kind of difficult questions, how to set up that kind of infrastructure properly. So that's closing my speech here. If you're interested in the more details, please come to Uteberg. It's a room here up the stairs. And then we can talk really about the details of these kind of journeys. Thank you very much for your attention.
That's really cool. It's probably the only presentation I've ever seen that ends with a QR code. I mean, 10 years ago, we thought we no longer did this stuff, did we? Now, the whole world is different again. QR codes are alive again. Yeah, thank you very much. Remember, I ended up sort of all these regions around the world, local zones, 5G access points, things like that. One thing that I want you to take away, though, is that given that we already have more than 10,000 customers here in Switzerland, apparently a local region is not always necessary. Yeah, I mean, for latency and residency requirements and improving the reliability of the network, absolutely. But quite a few of the Swiss companies are not only targeting Switzerland, they're targeting a worldwide audience. Yeah, so the fact that all of these regions around the world are identical means that if you've built it for one region, with one click of a button, you can launch it in Japan, in Cape Town, or in South America. Yeah, and so that's the power of the cloud as well. It's not just for that you get a low latency as a company, you get low latency to wherever your customers are. But I want to think about sort of beyond this region. So regions consist of at least 3 availability zones. Availability zone is built out of multiple data centers that are actually separated from each other, such that they're on different power supplies, they're in different tier 1 networking, they're in different flood and earthquake zones, such that if you would lose one of those AZs, you still have the other AZs to keep a highly available application running. Now, next to that, we got closer to our customers. We're using local zones, we're using wavelength zones, there's more than 400 points of presence. But it doesn't stop there. Because many of our customers had been telling us that, oh yes, they would love to develop for AWS. However, they still need to connect back in with truly low latency to some of the services that will be running in their own data centers. Yeah, and they see this as a transitionary phase. Imagine you still have a big SAP system running on-premise with a whole bunch of applications that you're in the process of moving, but haven't moved yet you want to develop your new applications for AWS. So AWS Outpost is a hardware service, basically, that we deliver into your own data center that makes it look like as if you have AWS inside your own data center. And there's different reasons why customers want this, of course. You know, whether it's like FanDuel, who does sports betting, they make use of Outposts for compliance and for latency reasons. First Abu Dhabi Bank makes use of Outposts for data residency requirements. And Philips makes use of Outposts with their healthcare platform, where they put Outposts in hospitals, for example. Yeah, so, and it's not just that this is a full rack, you get it in different formats, you can get a 1U or 2U one, or even a complete rack one, with services, with the AWS services that you're used to. So you can develop against AWS. Yeah, you have RDS on there, you have EBS, you have all the well-known AWS services on that rack, while having very low latency towards the services that are running in your own data center. So it looks as if AWS, and it's true, of course, sits inside your own data center. Now, there's not just data centers. Yeah? There's literally billions of devices out there. What does the cloud do for them? What does AWS do for them? And we have a series of services for that. Yeah? Whether it's IoT or, for example, operating systems for IT. So we have FreeRTOS, which is a well-known secure operating system for microcontrollers. IoT Core is a complex whole set of IoT services that allow you to build Internet of Things applications, or whether that is home automation, all the way over to factory automation. And then there's IoT Greengrass, which is a version of IoT Core that can run disconnected. And it's basically a complete set of IoT functions that you can put on an autonomous truck, for example. Yeah, if you're in mining and you have these massive autonomous devices that go into very hazardous conditions, you don't want anybody on there, but you want to have a programming environment on there that is identical to the programming environment that you have in the cloud. So it can run disconnected, using exactly the same compute functionalities as you would have in the cloud. When it becomes connected again, it uploads the data and you can process it in your normal cloud environment. And if you look actually at many of the manufacturing environments, and I don't know how it is here in Europe, but I think the average age of a sensor or a PLC or equipment in manufacturing in the US, the average age is 26 years old. That means it predates almost the internet. Now, and one of the important things there is that you want to go from an alarming situation where, PLCs in the past knew on or off. They were given an alarm. And in general, when you give an alarm, it's too late. What you want is actually continuous generating sensor data so that you can predict when failures is going to happen. So we've got 2 devices for that for our customers. One is Amazon Monitron, which are actually devices that allow you to measure vibration and temperature. And you can start to predict downtime of your equipment. And the AWS Panorama device, which takes in video streams and allows you to analyze that on that device. Yeah, there's many different scenarios for, especially because video is actually no longer something you want to watch. It's just a data stream to be analyzed. And for example, the airport of Cincinnati makes use of the Panorama device to monitor how people move through the airport and actually adjust services within the airport based on how people are moving through it. And they can do that by analyzing that on the Panorama device. Now, there's more requirements, of course. Yeah, there's always compliance, especially for example, in healthcare, or with other requirements. Maybe you want to use AWS out in a desert, or in a very remote location where you don't even have a network. And for that, we also have a set of services. They're called snow cones, or snow. Yeah? You have the snow cone, which is a relatively small device. It has some storage on it. You can also run EC2 on the instances on that. So you can do pre-processing with software that you wrote yourself or software that you acquired. And Snowball is a bit bigger. There's a bit more storage into it, and you can run more compute on it. But you can run this completely disconnected from anywhere in the world. So if you are the manager of this very large telescope array in Chile, and you have these terabytes and terabytes of data that you're generating every day, you can't move this over the internet to places where you want to analyze it. So you put this on these devices, and you ship it back to Amazon, and we'll put it in Amazon S3 for you. And the most extreme of that is the snowmobile. It's basically a truck that drives up to your data center, we'll plug some fibers in, and we'll suck the whole data center empty into this device, and then drive it over to an AWS data center and put it there in storage for you. Now, if I think about, one customer that has been working a lot at the edge is Verity. Yeah, Verity provides automated inventory management service that uses drones to give their customers insight about the state of their warehouses. It is really amazing. Here to talk about Verity and how they use AWS and drones to capture and process that data is their founder, Raffaello D'Andrea. Raffaello, please come on stage.
Good morning. I want to start with a question. Does your company operate a warehouse of any type? Imagine that you manage the warehouse, or you're an executive managing hundreds of sites. Would you not want to know with full certainty that you have all the materials you need for production, all the goods you want to sell, or all the inventory you manage for your clients? Verity has created a fully autonomous inventory management solution powered by self-flying drones that gives our clients full visibility for any warehouse. The drones are fully autonomous. No human intervention is required for takeoff, landing, charging, or navigation. The only time that a drone needs to be handled is after more than 1,000 flights, the batteries wear out and need to be replaced, which takes less than a minute. They carry a suite of sensors, including high-resolution imagers, 3D depth sensors, and environmental sensors. You can see that here in the video. They can operate in complete darkness. They can sense their environment and avoid obstacles. They don't need any form of connectivity to do their work except when charging. We provide value to our clients in two distinct ways. The first is what you would expect of any autonomous automated solution, and that is to do the job more efficiently. As it relates to managing inventory, it's a task that people really do not want to do manually because it is super dull, and it's also dangerous because of the heights involved. The second way in which we bring value to our clients is by leveraging the low marginal cost to operate our system. Our clients are collecting data 10 times, 50 times more frequently than they used to. This allows them to drive their errors down to zero, which means that they no longer have to look for things when they need them, results in a reduction in write-offs and lost sales, which means happier clients downstream. Here's a typical results from one of our client sites. you can see that over time, the issue rate gets driven down to 0. This would either be impossible or prohibitively expensive without the Verity system. The savings go beyond just dollars and cents. By automating the task and driving your errors down to 0, you can have a significant impact on your environment. First, the system is super efficient. The drones can fly in complete darkness. Second, you no longer need the equipment to do the task manually, and it also means you don't need to maintain that equipment. And third, by improving efficiency and by reducing waste, you can significantly reduce CO2 emissions. We launched the system in 2021 and started rolling it out across IKEA and DSV networks. Earlier this year, we started to roll out across Maersk in North America. We are now working with over a dozen companies and helping them move in the journey towards a zero-error warehouse. We are operating in 12 countries, and by the end of the year, we'll be doing more than 1 million inventory checks per month and flying over 200 kilometers per day. How do you bring a sophisticated multi-agent system to life that appends a traditional way of doing things? These are the 4 principles that guide us, and they're the same 4 principles that we used at Kiva Systems, now Amazon Robotics, to disrupt the way the distribution centers run, and seen here in the video. The first is full autonomy. All the economics breaks down if people have to intervene. The second is best put as follows. Kiva was not a maker of mobile robots, and Verity is not a maker of drones. We are makers of systems, and specifically as it relates to Verity, that includes some hardware, but mostly software. The third is we designed the system from the ground up for the task at hand. Not only does this allow us to make the system very high performance, it also means that if something doesn't quite work the way we want it to, we can drill down, address the issue, and then roll it out across our network. And last but not least is learning and adaptation. The more the system runs, the better it gets. We are a cloud-enabled solution and is built upon many AWS services for storage, automation, and computation. Let's start at the client's WMS, or warehouse management system. The Verity Cloud, the data the Verity Cloud receives from our client over time guides it to determine what areas of the warehouse need to be checked and inspected. Missions are sent to the drones via AWS IoT Core and executed by the drones autonomously. They then process this data and upload their insights to the cloud. They also run various adaptation loops and diagnostic loops for improving their performance and monitoring their performance. We chose AWS services because of the clear documentation and the ease with which we could embark on our cloud journey. This allows us to focus on our core competency, which is creating high-performance systems and generating the insights that give value to our clients. Our clients themselves can also monitor operations via the Verity dashboard and also at the corporate level via the Verity control tower if someone wants to have access across all of the sites. And again, all of this is cloud-enabled. We are really just scratching the surface. Sensors are small, lightweight, low power, and this trend is continuing with new capabilities being created. They're a perfect payload for a mobile platform such as a drone, which excels in high value to weight ratios. And what is more valuable than data and information? We will soon live in a future where it will be cheaper to fly than it is to stand still. And what I mean by that, it will be more efficient to keep a sensor at a fixed location in space with a mobile platform such as a drone than it is to wire it up and maintain it. In such a world, why would you ever have any fixed infrastructure when you can collect data and insights on demand, when you need it, where you need it? The vast amounts of data created by these sensor platforms and the insights generated by them will usher a new era of industrialization. Thank you for your attention.
You cannot imagine how cool this is, or maybe you understand how cool this is, but as someone who's also the CTO of a company that has 175 warehouses around the world, this is absolutely really cool. And I think it's amazing. Now, we remember before we ended up that sort of the edge, really cloud is not only something that sits centralized somewhere, or even in these 27 regions around the world, it sits really close to you. And with the snow devices, even as close as where you would like to be. Whether it's on a ship in the middle of the ocean, whether it's on Antarctica, or, maybe there is one more step to take. Where is the next frontier where we are bringing these cloud services? And so there's a lot of young businesses and even established larger businesses that are making use of satellites. And so whether it's low orbiting or whether the bigger ones that are further out, really satellites, space is truly the next frontier. But, as always, to be able to monitor and operate your satellites, it's extremely expensive because you need to build these ground stations and you need to own them, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's basically that innovation in space is again constrained by the hardware required to actually do this. So we decided to build AWS Ground Station. Basically, it's the way for you to communicate with satellites in a pay-as-you-go manner, just as you're used with all the other AWS systems. You just rent some antenna time, only pay for the time that you've used to communicate with your satellites. And then the data that flows off your satellites can flow into AWS, where it can be analyzed, and all of these kind of things. So for example, the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center in the UAE has launched the HOPE probe, I think in 2020, and they reached Mars in 2021. And the data from these instruments flows through AWS Ground Station into Amazon S3, where it's being made available to researchers around the world within 20 minutes. That's really cool. And we see much of this innovation happening in the area of space. And as such, we actually started an AWS Space Accelerator, where it's a 4-week business program, support program, to help solve the biggest challenges in the space industry. And whether those are really operating here on Earth, or whether they're operating out there on satellites, there's many different, very innovative businesses making use of the Space Accelerator. And we even got to the point that we'll be able to send one of the snow cones into the International Space Station. So believe me, there's a lot of work that goes into before a device is certified to be able to get up in a rocket to the International Space Station. But this is one of those snow cones. It has storage. It is, you can run EC2 on it, and you can do all sorts of compute. So they're actually storing data on it from the experiments that they're doing. Unfortunately, there is no UPS that comes and pick up the package for you. But, maybe UPS comes to that point as well. So the next frontier really is space. And actually, what this shows you is that, remember, we started off with one region in eastern of the US. Now with 27 regions, 7 more coming, including here in Switzerland. And then we have all these points of presence. We have wavelength, where you access points of the 5G, then outposts that sit on-premise. Then we have all the billions of devices running Amazon IoT Core. The disconnected, rugged edge with all these snow devices, and then space. So I call AWS these days the everywhere cloud. It is no longer the case that cloud is something centralized somewhere. It is everywhere where you are or where you want it to be. Now, we talked about hardware, mostly. But remember that it's not just about hardware. Many of the AWS services can be run in the cloud, on the edge, or in your own data center, or on your own laptop. Yeah, whether it's EKS or ECS, the container services. We started off with AWS Storage Gateway that you could have on-premise, and it would actually transmit data back into the cloud. It is not just about hardware. Software services are everywhere as well. Now, this means it's distributed, but it's not decentralized. With that, I mean there's one uniform interface to all of these services, regardless where they're running. Whether they're running in a zone, in a local zone, in a region, on the Snow device next to your desk. Everywhere, you have the uniform interface to talk to these AWS services. And this allows you to build services like you always wanted to, but never could, because you were constrained in your innovation. And cloud has removed those constraints. Now, for today, I would really urge you to be curious. Quite a few in the audience here are new to AWS. But also quite a few of you already have 10 or 15 years experience of using AWS. So please talk to each other. Learn from each other. Listen to your peers around here about what kind of things are hard on AWS or which things are easy. Make use of all the breakout sessions and learn about AWS and make your own decisions about how you would best use them. So with that, thank you very much for your attention. Now go build. Thank you.